So Diane and I, excuse me, will start with an acknowledgement. Normally I would sing this, and I tried to sing it this morning to Diane and she went, no. No, you sound like a frog, you're not singing it. So that's what sisters are for. Marang Nungari, Mang Wilaga Wiradjuri, Mang Wilaga Withery, Mang Wilaga Wathery. I pay homage and respect to my elders of the Wiradjuri Nation, and in doing so I pay homage and respect to my elders of the Gamilaroi Nation. We are here today because of all that they've taught us and the knowledges they've given us, that we could translate that into these booklets. I also pay homage and respect to the people of the Eora Nation and their very many clan groups upon whose lands we are on today, and thank them for all that they've done that we might survive.
Yina galangbu gibi bangbu gambana du ninyalgi Rajuri gu nurambangu Rajuri mangadang ngindugi ngini yanae yanana ngina yanana ngina yanana ngina marambang wuda wanangana wanangana marambang wanangana yanana ngina yanana ngina yanana ngina marambang mil ngana ngana marambang ngana yanana ngina yanana ngina yanana ngina marmangan yalla yalla marambang yalla wanangana wanangana marambang wanangana ngadu bani gugu bara ngiani warna garigo maingalang Eora Nurambang. So I said, ladies and gentlemen, also welcome to the meeting, the gathering. I've just sung a song that the women sing when you come together in a group like this. So it's a bit of leaving your problems and your worries right away for a little while, giving yourself a break from them. Come and hear good things, see good things and talk about good things. Do that by doing good learning and listening to one another. Gain good knowledge from one another as you come together, and do it through showing respect, Yinjamara. I've also acknowledged that we stand on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Mandanguwo, thank you.
So I just wanted to start off by saying a thank you to the Research Centre for Children and Families for asking me to be involved in this project. Well, I think that is a very loose term. They asked to talk to me, and the next thing I knew I was on their project. You know, that's what happens. And when they were discussing places where we might work with different communities, and they heard that I was from Dubbo, I was really excited because I much prefer to do research where I'm helping to give back to my community. And so it was a no-brainer for me to be involved in working with the caseworkers at Dubbo. And I must say that I was so impressed with the work that the caseworkers were doing and felt a bit useless, really, because I'm sitting in meetings and they're the ones coming up with ideas, and I thought, I don't know that I'm really able to contribute much. I'm giving a few ideas here and there, and I'm one of those action people. I'd really like to be able to do something more. And I think it was in 2020, COVID hit, and we're in a meeting, and one of the key things they spoke about at the Dubbo meeting was the inability of the birth parents and the kids to make contact with one another because of COVID. And it was really hard because a lot of the parents didn't have computers. Some of them didn't even have phones. And so how could they maintain personal contact, let alone cultural contact? And so, of course, straight out of my mouth came, well, what if my sister and I developed a booklet
Dobbed in.
on Wiradjuri language? And they said, oh, that sounds really good, Lynn. And I said, yeah, let me go and talk to her. And Diane said,
So you want to put all the Wiradjuri language into one book and try to teach it to people that haven't had access to language before. I said, it's not going to work. So we came up with an idea, because when I talked to my elders in my community years ago, so I've been teaching language for over 30 years, and they said the best thing for it to work would be in categories, to teach them in categories so they're not getting everything all at once. So it was a no-brainer to put these books into categories as well. And we started out with thinking we were going to do 1 and 2, but there's actually 7 books in all. There could be a lot more, because I have a huge amount of resources and things like that. But the 7 is really good and user-friendly for a lot of people.
yeah. And so we went through quite a long stage of development in these. We sat down and brainstormed and worked out what we could put in each booklet. Sometimes we went back and added to it. So, for instance, we thought we'd finished booklet 1, and then I went back to Diane and said, you know what? In nowhere have we put in an acknowledgement to teach kids, and parents and kids will want to know how to do that. Well, that'll have to go in book 1, we said. So that changed that book a little bit. We presented, all of the documents we did were in very basic Word documents, because that's all I'm good at. And we showed them to anyone who would listen in Dubbo. We carried these booklets around with us. We showed them to as many community people as we could and got their advice. And the advice we often got back was, no, cuz, that's all right. Keep going, keep doing it, you're doing fine. And of course, one of those groups that I showed it to was people from SBS, because I was working with them at the time with developing the NAIDOC curriculum booklets. If anybody's seen them, they're online, they're amazing. And I was talking to a young woman there, Saska, and I said, Saska, what do you think? She said, oh, I think we only had 2 booklets at that time. She said, can you come over and show these to our Aboriginal design team? And I said, oh, okay. By the time I got over there, we'd finished 4 booklets, put them on the table. They looked at them, and by the end of the meeting, they said, we'd like to go into partnership with you. And that's why these look so beautiful, because of the work that they did.
And we also had to talk about how the font looked, because you want to cater to a lot of children's needs, and we had to make sure the font was oversized 14 and that for different learning needs, and children with dyslexia and everything like that. So we're trying to think of all these things as a teacher that I needed to put into this book that can support different learning stages or different needs. So that's all been incorporated in there. You can see when you go through, the font's lovely and big, easy to read, user-friendly. So we wanted to be user-friendly. We still kept English in there as well. I could have put a lot more. I could have did that in whole Wiradjuri. But because we're English speakers and we're learning a second language, we put it in both. So we had to think how we can support carers as well, and workers, with these booklets. So we tried to think of everything we could possibly come up with. We put little cultural things in there, might be do you know things to put a bit of cultural knowledge in there as well. We didn't want to put a lot in there because we want that talking to happen. So this is a start for the kids, and then when they get to go to places where either I'm teaching them stuff, Uncle Ralph, Lewis Burns, or any of those cultural knowledge holders out there in the different community, they can still have that yarning time with the students and pass on more cultural knowledge, because it has to come from elders like myself to pass on that knowledge. And
so when we were designing the booklets, we decided to kind of work out, well, what's our expertise in designing these booklets? And Diane's expertise is language. I mean, I started learning with her some 30 odd years ago, and I'm like hopeless. I just can't do it. But that's Diane's expertise. And we also have our own cultural practices. So my cultural practice is the kangaroo cloaks. And so we thought, how would we divide these booklets up? So I just let Diane talk about why we decided to create the sections in the booklet that we created.
So part of my work as a teacher, I've taught at family groups with mothers and young children, preschool, kindergarten to up to high school, and adults at TAFE, and a bit at the university. So I've got to put a lot of activities together. I can't just go out and buy the activities off the shelf. So it was just a matter of me thinking which activities would be user-friendly for the book, which is going to build up some literacy skills as well. So we put closed passages in there. We put word banks where they can trace over the words. So anything in grey writing, you can trace over them for writing purposes. Some simple sentences, questions, conversation pieces. And we also acknowledge Stan Grant and John Rudder, who have worked very hard together. So that's showing where an Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal man can pull together to create something really good. In this, we've had a lot of partnerships, which is good. It's pulling together, make things good. So I was able to develop all the activities. I found them easy to make. So I'm also doing work booklets at high school and that in different categories and that as well, which is probably a little bit higher than what's in the books. And I've also worked on books with TAFE as well. So I was able to pull out some of the activities or use the word banks to create the activities that are used in the book. So that was my expertise in building the activities.
And the second half of the book is based on another aspect of our culture and language, which is often overlooked. Because when we were kids, it was actually against the law for cultural transmission in Aboriginal communities and families. And so this is something that we're relearning as well. And so we wanted to teach about symbols and tracks. And we thought the best way to do that was to take the images that I'd created on the kangaroo cloaks. And so that's what the second part of each booklet is about. And if you go from book 1 to book 6, it's scaffolded learning. So each book starts to get a little bit harder and provides a little bit more information about language development with Wiradjuri. And there's more and more information. And book 7 is actually a culmination of all the images of symbols and tracks we've used across all other 6 booklets. So we've just got one book on symbols and tracks. And so we think that people can use these and they're designed to use with somebody. They're not designed to work just to give to a kid to go and work on their own. So it's about creating conversation, creating a bond and working together between parents, carers, teachers and kids. So if teachers, they can photocopy some of this, or no, we want them to buy them, don't we? But anyway, so the opportunity is there. We've tried to build in a whole lot of different ways that these can be used, but we really emphasise it's about working together to create a bond and a relationship through cultural and language learning.
Yeah. Also, because the children that are in care now are just one generation, you've got 3 to 4 generations, if not more, of people that have been taken, we say taken, but put into care, but taken, that haven't had access to language and cultural knowledge. So this is for their healing as well. So quite a few generations there.
Yeah. So we've tried to develop and think about things that we thought were important in the development of these books. And I might just ask now Stephen if he would come up and briefly talk about it from a caseworker's point of view of what having access to these booklets are. At the moment, you've only got the first 2 booklets, but the others are in production. And as soon as they're available, we'll let you know so you can get access to all of the booklets. Was there anything you
We
wanted?
wanted an Aboriginal male perspective as well. So that's why we kindly asked him to come up, put this young fella on the spot with us, give him a challenge.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name's Stephen. I'm a caseworker with Uniting in Dubbo. So I think for myself, the kids that we work with, these are going to be obviously really good resources, not just for the kids to have a connection to their culture, but for us as practitioners as well. So it's going to give us more insight into the area that we work on, especially for myself out in Dubbo. And we're lucky in that a lot of the kids that we have with Uniting are from Wiradjuri land. So a lot of them are still living on country. But I know that that's not the case for a lot of kids in care, which is really hard. And that's where having something like this, it could be sort of a launching point into developing more resources for other areas of the state and then across the country as well. So I think both Lynn and Di have done an amazing job here. I think we're really lucky that we've gotten the chance to sort of be a part of it and have a look at it across the different stages of production. I know that myself, I picked up on a couple of little grammar and spelling errors that only Lynn wasn't too not happy about, but she was grateful, I think, that I was able to sort of pick up on a couple of things. And that's a really good opportunity for us to all to sort of learn together. Yeah, it's that team effort. And going back, I know that now that we've got a copy of them, I've got a couple of kids in mind straight away that as soon as I get back, I want to start bringing this into. I've got a couple of cultural support plans that are due this month with a case plan. So I can take this out to those kids because they're from Wiradjuri land. They're living with carers who are both from Wiradjuri land. And so this is going to be a massive sort of boost in their own identity and culture. Yeah, I think that's me. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. So going forward, we've already got plans in place for some other books. Diane and I were talking this morning and thinking maybe a science and technology.
Yeah. I've been working on mathematical terminology, so looking at the mathematical words in our language and how that could be incorporated into a book. But I've got a lot of books that I've done but haven't done anything with them. Same with my daughter, who's done about 13 or 14 storybooks, but they're not published yet. So
this is learning for us, and then we can go back to our communities and say, look at what we've done, you can do this too, and help them work out how to move forward.
Yeah.
And I also might say, just a thank you, because I'm looking at it, Tracy Cameron, who looked at these in relation to being a language teacher. She teaches Gamilaroi. She gave us really good ideas about things I needed to make sure I included. And then she said, as we were just doing book 2, what about Gamilaroi? And I just went, oh, Tracy, let us get these ones done first.
I just want to say to Tracy, I can convert it to Gamilaroi easy. I can do that. So that's our mother's side, and we're Wiradjuri on our father's side.
Yeah. So thank you to the Dubbo team, to the caseworkers who I remember at Wollongong got all of the drafts of the booklets that we had at the time and came back with lots of spelling mistakes, and I went, oh, you mean we actually have to edit these? Oh, okay. And even today, Diane opened up the book and went, I found 2 mistakes. But it's okay. Nobody else knows their mistakes, just us.
Oh, you would work it out.
Yeah. So we'll have to go back and change those.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for the opportunity to create these. And we really hope that they have significant use across country, across New South Wales, and that they are useful. And I feel I can say to the caseworkers in Dubbo, I feel like I've been useful now, so thank you.
Yeah, and it's also good to be acknowledged. So to have everybody acknowledged in the book, but ourselves as well as authors and producers of the work. So I really appreciate that, because you do a lot of work, and a lot of the times you don't get acknowledged for the work that you do. And a lot of the times people want to take your knowledge and have it as their own. So this is really good that we have that there. And I really appreciate that. That's showing Yinjamara, which is deep respect. So Mundanguwa, thank you for that. Is there any questions you'd like to ask us?
That
Anything?
sounded like a question back there.
Anything? Don't think it's stupid, because we're quite happy to answer anything.
I want to know how to order them, because I probably need 100 for the kids.
We need to work that out.
We've got to work that one out. Yeah. And we're actually working on hopefully getting some money so that we can get multiple copies done that we can give to the caseworkers that have been involved in the project. So we haven't forgotten you. We're going to try and get multiple copies so that we can give them to you and you can use them with your kids. And then we'll work out how other people can order them.
Thank you. Yeah?
Yep, question.
Use them online.
The first two booklets are going to be online with SBS.
They're online.
They're online already.
We'll send that to you in an email.
Yeah, so we'll send out an email with the details, and they can be downloaded more as a taster. But SBS are helping us find a publisher for all of the booklets, because they don't do that kind of work anymore.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, yes?
I haven't read through them properly, so this might be a silly question. For a surface where you don't have as many Indigenous people working, or we might have a few people who go to for consultation, do you think it's appropriate to do this work with Indigenous kids if the worker is not Indigenous?
Yes.
Because I look at this and I'm like, I feel like the first thing we're going to do is sit down as a team and do this.
Yeah. Because a lot of the carers won't be Aboriginal and absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how we've designed it, so anybody can work on it. Or you might have kids who want to learn an Aboriginal language like Wiradjuri, then they can do it. We always encourage people to learn Wiradjuri language, and indeed any Aboriginal language. You should. You should know the first languages of this country. But we say the teachers have to be Aboriginal. We get to teach our own language.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I also think for any of the staff that are working with Aboriginal people, they didn't get the opportunity, Aboriginal staff, to learn language and culture. So these books can help them if they want to work through them and build up their own knowledge. It's one language group, but a lot of the language or grammatical patterns and that follow right across New South Wales. So you just have to get in and have a go at the book. If it helps and supports you as well, that's a bonus. Yeah.
I think that schools generally will be very interested in this, and there's a lot of Indigenous teachers as well who probably want to get their hands on it. So how will we get it out through the education department?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the other things we have to look at, is getting them recognised through the department and getting them to support. In teaching languages other than English, one of the priorities that we suggest is that Aboriginal languages be taught in each community, but it's the local language. So we've still got a lot of resources that have to be developed in this field. We hope that these contribute to that.
Yeah. It's not something that you can just go out and buy online. You've got to be someone who can make them. And so to put them into books to help support the people that can't make them is a big thing, and I think it'll be so helpful. because our languages are kicking off right across New South Wales, especially now with the legislation of Aboriginal languages. We're the only state in Australia that has that. So I think the more resources we can put out there, the more likely that it's going to be taught within a school, that it's not going to be put in that hard box. And the more we can have access for our children to have access to resources like this, the better it is for our language and culture and them to see it. I've had language displays where I've put the books out on tables and that. So I've got books from different nations and I put them out, the picture dictionaries, other dictionaries. And you'll see people that'll come up and, oh, my son, this is our language, this is our thing. And they'll pick it up and they'll carry it around like it's a baby, carrying the dictionary around like it's a baby. And I have to say, well, I need the book back, but at least you know it's here and where you could buy it, so I could give them the information about where they can buy things. So it's so important. You don't realise the emotional thing when they see a book or can get their hands on a book and have it. So for all the nations in New South Wales and across Australia, this is vital.
Yep. A question at the back? Yep.
I wanted to say thank you for creating the books and making them available to us. I had a question. Would they be an audio version so that we can teach the right pronunciation?
Yeah, that's the next job.
Yeah.
That is another job. We just needed to get these produced at the moment, and you'll see the last pages and throughout all the books is information on how to pronounce the sounds and how they're written. So Diane's made sure she's built that in.
And there's only one area right at the bottom because it says when an A follows a W, and then they put AW instead of WA. So it makes a what sound, even like a WH. In English or Wiradjuri or any language, it makes your tongue go O. So you make like what, makes an ot sound. Okay, so that last bit. But we'll fix that up. Yeah.
At the back.
Oh, I was just going to say, I heard about Columbia, the first bilingual school starting.
Yes, and I'm going there on Friday to do some activities for the children. Maybe a bit of dance, a bit of storytelling, a bit of song.
Yeah.
Secondly, I was looking at this and reminded a bit about the Moree hippie hug, And I was thinking of cultural plans. It would be lovely too for the children to be able to write in language the way my language is.
So, and they are doing whole language up there. So with Clark Webb, so he's doing whole language. So we've been a part of going in and watching that as language people across New South Wales. So people like myself, we have come together and we do go to one another's nations to see what we're doing and get ideas from one another, support.
Yeah, very exciting. I can't tell you the excitement across New South Wales and the support for Clark in getting that happening. It's just, and that's been many, many years in the making. Judy?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you could explain a bit more about the legislation around Aboriginal languages.
Oh, rightio. So I was a part of that. So
there's the New South Wales Aboriginal Languages Act, which was released in 2017. Diane was part of that, and I'm on the New South Wales Aboriginal Languages Trust.
Yeah, so we were asked to come together for that and speak in language. So a few of the language people went in there and spoke. If you go in there, you'll probably see me getting a bit teary because I had the other lady next to me talking about her family, how they should have been there because we were the first ones to go in and actually speak in Parliament House in our language. And I thought about my uncle. So when my uncle was about 6-year-old, he was really clever. And the grandmothers and the aunties and that all thought he was real clever and smart. And they said, we've got to send him to school. So they sent him to school and he got comfortable. He said he really liked the teachers and the students and he was having a real good time at school. And he got comfortable with them and he could speak Wiradjuri and Nyampa language. And he dropped into speaking his language. And they took him to court. And they said he was using bad language. And as a little fella, he's saying, but I wasn't swearing, I wasn't using bad language, I wasn't talking bad. And it wasn't 2 years later that he realised that it was his Aboriginal language that they were calling bad language. That little 6-year-old boy got taken away for 2 years for speaking his language, to drill his language out of him. So that's my father's eldest brother. So as a result of that, the people went into speaking whispers around the sheds and that to stop us learning our language, to stop my father and my uncle's brothers and sisters from learning their language, including my father. So they spoke words in isolation, and we grew up with words in isolation. And I was told that story when I was little in infants classes. So I made a determined effort back in infants to go and find out about my language and my cultural knowledge. Dad even showed me his dog tags, which is like a little passport you had to do to be able to go out and go into communities or travel or that. You were accorded with your travel. If I wanted to find out my family tree, I wouldn't go to deaths, births and marriages. I would go to property owners' manuals, as Aboriginal people were included as stock. So if I wanted to find out my family tree, I would have to go and look at these stocks of property owners, because we were classified right up to I was 7 years old, I think, as flora and fauna. So we weren't human beings in this country, we were flora and fauna. So that's not generations ago, this is us. Okay, so we were flora and fauna. So my uncle, when I went down for Reconciliation Week to speak at Parliament House.
Yeah.
Run out of time. But my uncle must have rang 12 times to say, are you all right? Are you sure that you should be going down speaking language there? So 12 times. And I said, yes, Uncle, I'm right. I'm strong in it. I'm right. Yeah.
So
Okay,
we
thank
hope
you.
that these booklets help our next generation and ongoing generations to be strong in their culture and language as well. We'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, because we like to talk.